In my ongoing search for the historical Jesus, today I'm going to address another very simple question. I'm a very simple guy and I address very simple questions. Was Jesus married?
Simcha Sessions, out-of-the-box insights into history, religion, and politics.
So today's question, was Jesus married? Very controversial question, the Da Vinci Code, the church, all of that kind of stuff. But before I get into it from a purely historical point of view, remember, please, to like, subscribe, share, and if you really want to go for it, become a member. Now, to the question at hand, was Jesus married? There seems to be a kind of a real desire to keep him unmarried. Well, let's look at it historically. Historically, in first century Judea, he would have been one strange rabbi if he wasn't married. I mean, it's expected. He's called rabbi not by me, by the Gospels. Mary Magdalene, when she sees him, she says, Rabbeinu, my rabbi, our rabbi. He was a rabbi. And in the first century, if you're a rabbi in Judea, to this day, you gotta be married. Because in Judaism, family values, the rabbi has to be married to create a model with a wife and children of what a healthy family should be like. So if you've got a first century rabbi who's not married, people would be talking, what's wrong with Jesus? And to this day, the traditions would come down. That was one strange first century rabbi. Couldn't be. But there is no such tradition. Even the enemies, like Celsus, of Christianity, they don't say, and by the way, he was also not married. Nobody mentions that. They attack the Gospels, Christianity, in different ways. I won't go into it now, but nobody ever suggests that he wasn't married. Where does this come from? Why would they airbrush the marriage out of the Gospels? There's one word, Paul. Paul is the problem. Because Paul, he was a rabbi, he says so. He himself was a rabbi. He was the student of Gamliel, famous Rabbi Gamliel. He turns against Judaism. He says, you don't have to keep kosher, you don't have to keep the Sabbath, but don't have sex. That's not in Judaism. He has a problem with sex, with marriage, and with women generally. And yet, he's really a witness to the fact that Jesus was married. Why? Because he's so against women and marriage that if Jesus wasn't married, the first guy who would point at that would be Paul, and he never does. And listen, let's go back then to the Gospels, to the people that knew Jesus, right? The history. What does it say? It says that there was one woman that cried all over his naked feet and then wiped his feet with her hair and then kissed his naked feet. Now, in another gospel, it's either the same woman or another woman that anoints with very expensive oil his feet and wipes his feet with her hair. Maybe this is a retelling of the same incident, or maybe this is a thing that's happening in his synagogue. It couldn't be. Only a wife would touch her husband's feet in that way. I don't know, I don't know of any church or synagogue where congregants routinely kiss the minister or the rabbi's feet and wash his feet, his naked feet. And by the way, in Judaism, hair is very significant. In the Hellenistic world generally, hair represented in women the transition from being a child to a woman. In the cult of Artemis, they would cut their hair at that particular moment. And in Judaism, to this day, a woman's hair gets sexualized once she has relations, when she's married. That's why religious women today, Jewish women, wear wigs, but they don't before they're married. Because it's considered ervah, nakedness. So it's not just poetry. If somebody is wiping the rabbi's feet with her hair, she's wiping his feet with her nakedness. That couldn't be unless they're married. And then you have the Gnostic Gospels. it says explicitly that Jesus kissed Mary Magdalene on the lips. Now, unless, again, this is a very strange relationship that this particular rabbi is having with congregants, she was his wife. And the most tragic and best example of that intimate relationship, that powerful relationship between a man and his wife, is what happens at the cross. Mary Magdalene suddenly pops out of nowhere in all four Gospels to be at the cross. What's she doing there? Why haven't we heard about her before? We have, but her name wasn't mentioned, except one time as a funder of the Jesus movement. Her name wasn't mentioned, but she's been there all along, wiping Jesus' feet, crying. And suddenly she's at the cross, watching her husband being crucified. Why else would she be there? The apostles aren't there. And then she secretly follows the people who take his body. She wants to see where he's buried. Why? Because she wants to anoint his naked body. What does that mean? People think that anointing, it got mythologized. Everybody's anointing everybody. She wants to prepare her husband's body for burial. Who does that to this day? Either the Chevra Kadisha, the Jewish burial society, where rabbis basically prepare a body for burial, or its intimate family. No congregant woman touches a rabbi's body after death, naked body. And imagine Jesus' body has been flayed, he's been crucified, he's caked in mud and blood. Who shows up to do that? And who dares suggest that she would touch his private parts after death if she wasn't the wife? So, ladies and gentlemen, if we just look at the historical evidence embedded in the Gospels themselves, both the Gospels in the New Testament and the Gospels excluded, the Gnostic Gospels, there's one conclusion. We're not talking about a kinky relationship between a rabbi and his congregants. We're talking about a powerful relationship between a rabbi and his wife. Jesus was married. Okay, if you like what you heard, a little provocative, then don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share, and to become a member. And if you're already a member, thank you so much for your support.